The first thing I mention when someone comes to me and says, I can't believe in God because of all the evil or pain and suffering in the world, I go through a little exercise I think it's important for everyone to go through, and that is the only way to ever resolve the issue of pain, suffering, and evil is in the context of God. If you try to approach it outside the context of God, it makes absolutely no sense. For instance, just quickly, once you assume that evil exists in our world, then you're also assuming good. If you assume the objective categories of evil and good, you're assuming there's a moral law to govern those two categories. Once you assume there's a moral law to govern the two categories, the moral law itself has to be objective, it has to be absolute. Otherwise, the categories of good and evil are shifting and moving. Then you come to the point, if there's an absolute moral law to give us the absolute definitive categories of good and evil, then who can possibly give that objective moral law other than someone who is above it? An objective reality in the sense that is absolute and not he himself subject to the created order. So what we're saying is the only way you can have categoric evil and good is to have objective moral law. The only way you can have objective moral law is to have an objective moral lawgiver, which by definition can only be the creator, sustainer of all that is. As part of that answer, usually when we ask the question of evil, pain, and suffering, we do so by saying something like, I just can't believe in God, and all these little children in the world are hungry and they're suffering, there's pain, where is God? That assumes that life in itself has intrinsic value, that life is sacred, but life cannot be sacred. It can have no intrinsic value unless God exists. So that's why I say without God, there's no absolute moral law, there's no absolute category, definitive categories of good and evil. When you solve the question of pain and suffering, you must do so in the context of God, not outside of God's existence.